Alright, check this out. Everything we build has a cap. Cars peak out when the RPM's redline. Your Wi-Fi claims it's ultra-fast until family movie night, when every app crawls. Limits are everywhere, but in daily life they usually feel like something you can stretch or bend. You can push harder, risk consequences, reload. Light doesn't work that way. Its pace, 299,792 kilometers per second, is locked tighter than anything else we know. It isn't just a setting in physics you can tweak. It's the one constant where every test, every chase, every experiment hits the same wall. No one has ever caught it slipping. In the late 1800s, physicists thought light had to act like sound, rippling through a medium they called the ether. The Earth's motion should have made light drift faster in one direction and slower in another, but Michelson and Morley ran their now famous interferometer test, and the result was a dead end. No ether drift, no variation, no exception. That no finding forced a shocking conclusion. Light speed doesn't depend on motion through some background. It is invariant. If C holds fits for everyone, then Newton's law of stacking velocities collapses and the universe preserves. Consistency by shifting how time and space themselves work. Now take a simple scenario. You're holding a flashlight inside a speeding car. Everyday logic says the light should stack on top of the car's velocity. To you, it shoots forward as normal. To someone standing outside, it should look quicker. Car speed plus beam speed. But both observers measure the exact same speed. Accelerate the car to near light speed in some sci-fi thought experiment, and even then, photons escape your headlights at sea, not one bit faster. This law refuses to bend for perspective. That rigidity flips the definition of speed. Everywhere else, velocities add. Toss a ball while jogging, and its motion compounds. Light rips that intuition apart. If one thing refuses to follow Newton's addition rules, something else has to make room. So the burden shifts. Distance and c cannot budge, which leaves time and simultaneity to flex. Seconds stretch in one frame, compress in another. That's why the light clock argument matters. Once photons hold a line, the ticks of any moving clock slow in compensation. This isn't abstract math. It rewrote how we build systems. Take GPS satellites. They orbit Earth quickly and sit higher in its weaker gravitational field. Without relativistic corrections, their onboard atomic clocks would fall out of sync with ground clocks by microseconds each day. That small slip would grow to kilometers of error in your location readout. The very fact that your phone knows which cafe you're at is proof we live inside a universe where light speed stays invariant and time bends as payment. People clung to ether as long as possible because it saved the old worldview. Let time and space stay universal, just blame the medium. But the experiment left no cover. The adjustment landed directly onto our sense of passing seconds. Time is no longer a backdrop, but a variable tied to how you move. At jogging or driving speeds, the shift is microscopic, impossible to sense. But cruise close to light speed and the distortion is undeniable. Minutes inside a ship no longer match minutes tallied back home. The disagreement isn't faulty mechanics, it's a structural feature of reality. That seems unnatural, almost like physics playing favorites with light. But imagine the reverse. If photons didn't stay invariant, every law would fracture. Electromagnetic theory, conservation rules, even causality. The only way to hold the picture together is to lock C and let time and space become flexible. Once you accept that, time dilation isn't a glitch. It's the logical trade sheet the universe demands. The so-called cosmic speed limit doesn't just ground physics equations, it actively reshapes our experience of past and future. It's worth stressing how deep that lock runs. Planes can exceed the sound barrier. Networks can lag and recover. Engines can be tuned to break their stock stats. But light sits different. It doesn't permit almost, so it would help. The number is absolute, and the price of preserving it is rewriting our expectations of time itself. Einstein didn't invent a quirky new rule and drop it on the world. He connected the dots from what the experiments already revealed. Once C is invariant, every other coordinate, when events happen, how long things last, whether two happenings are simultaneous, must shift to keep the books balanced. So when we say light speed is the ultimate limit, we don't mean fastest thing you've seen so far. It is deeper. No material object, no signal, no domino of cause and effect can outrun it. If you try to imagine physics where something does, you tear up causality. Events could flip order, effects could arrive before causes. The restriction isn't arbitrary. It's a safeguard that keeps the story of the universe coherent. With all that in mind, you can see why this cap is different from every other limit in daily life. Exceed the limit on a road, and you risk a ticket. Exceed the sound barrier, and planes just adapt engineering. Exceed light's limit? Physics itself refuses. The universe doesn't allow the attempt because allowing it destroys the logic of time. So photons stay loyal to their pace, and everything else, time, clocks, perception, carries the strain. Which naturally raises the next problem. If light won't budge, then it means every person moving differently measures time differently. That conclusion is uncomfortable but inescapable. And the moment you put yourself in that picture, imagining what clocks look like on a near-light journey, you run into the strange fact that seconds for you and seconds for someone else don't agree at all. When time itself hits snooze, imagine blasting through space at nearly light speed and glancing at your wristwatch. To you, everything feels steady. 60 ticks equals 1 minute. No sluggish heartbeat, no slow breathing, no lagging electronics. Yet when you finally compare notes with a friend who stayed home, their clock shows 10 full minutes pass while you only. Counted 1, nothing malfunctioned. There are no tricks. The contradiction exists because reality itself allows both to be right. Time refuses to play referee with a single universal measure. This is time dilation, the direct consequence of light being unshakably constant. Once experiments prove he never budges, physics had to adjust somewhere else. The solution, duration stretches or shrinks depending on motion. Any clock you carry into a high-velocity journey, whether a quartz watch, an atomic clock, or your body's chemistry, ticks more slowly compared to one left behind. The effect doesn't arise from clunky hardware. It falls straight out of geometry on spacetime and has been tested many times with machines more exact than our senses could ever be. Think carefully about what that implies. On your ship, a minute feels normal because every process you can check obeys the same rhythm. Your brain signals, your blood pumps, your gadgets refresh, all remain synchronized with you. But from your friend's frame, your seconds are stretched. They watch your internal photon paths take diagonal detours without ever outrunning light's gap, demanding longer spans to complete each tick. To them, your minutes simply last more than theirs. Neither perception overrides the other. Both stand consistent within their own frames. It's only when comparisons happen across frames that the mismatch becomes visible. This realization dissolves the question of who is wrong. Neither is. Time just refuses to stay universal. Each reference frame carries its own clock stream, perfectly coherent inside, divergent when matched against another. At walking speed, the difference hides in the noise. At airplane or satellite speed, instruments can measure it. Ramp velocity closer to light and the drift becomes extreme. Minute versus 10 minutes is not fantasy, it's predictable math scaling with motion. Crucially, nothing breaks while this unfolds. Physics doesn't jam, and causality still holds. Each frame runs its laws smoothly, never noticing slowdown internally. The paradox only bothers us because we're so accustomed to imagining simultaneity as absolute. But Einstein flipped that assumption. Simultaneity dissolves once light holds invariant. Two observers may not agree on whether things happen at the same time. And once you let go of simultaneity, dilation is no longer a contradiction, it's the natural consequence. The geometry is easy to picture with the light clock. At rest, the photon bounces a short vertical path. On a moving craft, that photon traces a diagonal, covering a longer hypotenuse. Since it can't speed beyond c, that extra path requires extra time. That surplus shows up as dilation for the outsider's view. Nothing mystical occurs. The math insists more time must pass externally for the same event internally. You can think of it as second stretching, like pulling elastic. At rest, ticks come fast and crisp. Inject high velocity and the intervals lengthen. Those elongated beats aren't illusion. They show up in experiments. High-energy muons created in the upper atmosphere survive to sea level because their decay clocks are dilated. Experiments confirm this. Without dilation, they'd vanish long before reaching a detector on Earth. That single phenomenon trains physicists to recognize time stretch not as poetry, but as testable fact. Technology in daily use already depends on these distortions. The International Space Station orbits Earth rapidly, and astronauts onboard experience slower ticking than those on the surface. The size of the effect isn't a cinematic time jump. but about 0.01 seconds of difference per year. Atomic clocks flown in orbit, aboard planes, or even lifted slightly above ground show measurable divergence from matched equipment kept stationary. These comparisons prove beyond doubt that dilation applies to satellites, to humans, and to exact laboratory devices alike. Even mundane GPS navigation must include relativistic corrections, or the system would scatter your location data by miles. Without accounting for time's elasticity, the maps on your phone would fail. Despite this evidence, the idea still jars us because human culture runs on synchronized units of time. We live by shared calendars, school bells, and meeting schedules. Relativity undermines that comfort. The shared now doesn't hold universally. Motion turns time into an individual track record. Astronauts accumulating fractions of a second less per year, satellites adjusting by microseconds, particles surviving flights they shouldn't. Each confirms that clocks stubbornly refuse to agree once they move differently. The so-called snooze button metaphor captures it. A swift traveler's clock drags behind, as if pressed longer between ticks, while stay-at-home time marches on. But there's no jarring interruption. To the traveler, their minutes still arrive evenly. It's only when comparing across frames that dilation appears undeniable. The longer high velocity lasts, the bigger the stretch. And once the two rejoin, the mismatched totals prove how real the affect was. Seconds weren't universal. Minutes weren't consistent. Yet each frame lived coherently within its own flow. Which circles back to the broader theme. The universe insists on preserving light's constancy at all costs. The price is that time itself bends whenever necessary. Dilation doesn't signal broken physics. It signals a system balancing equations properly. What began as a thought experiment graduates into hard experimental law, and once you've accepted that time can flex to protect C, you're ready for the next step. Because physics didn't just rewrite time while leaving space untouched. It combined both into a single fabric, forcing us to see clocks and rulers as intertwined parts of the same stage. Space and Time, the collab album. Einstein's big shift was realizing that space and time don't play as separate tracks, they operate as one joint framework. For centuries, space was just a box you lived in, measured in 3 coordinates. Time was treated as something else entirely, a universal clock beat ticking the same for everyone. Einstein saw that keeping them separate didn't line up with the evidence. The constancy of light demanded they fuse into one system. The name given to that system is spacetime. What does that actually mean? Think about how you locate yourself. Position isn't just where you stand. It also matters when you stand there. You can't fully describe an event without both. A football pass doesn't just happen at a yard marker. It happens at 2.4 seconds into the play. A GPS pin isn't useful without a timestamp. Space-time makes this official. Events take 4 coordinates to describe, not 3. Time is folded into the same bookkeeping as length, width, and height. That shift feels abstract, but is what makes the equations stop conflicting once you bake in relativity. The next idea is even bigger. Space-time isn't rigid. Matter and energy bend it. To picture this, grab the familiar visual. Stretch a blanket flat and roll a heavy ball onto it. The surface curves, dipping inward. Now send a marble across that blanket and it no longer travels in a straight line. It loops or spirals, tracing the deformed surface. The marble isn't pulled by invisible strings. It's simply moving across warped geometry. That's Einstein's view of gravity. Not a force passed across distance, but objects fall in the straightest possible tracks allowed inside curved space-time. This clears up old puzzles. The Earth doesn't need unseen tethers to keep the moon locked in orbit. Earth's mass has reshaped the surrounding space-time, and the moon simply slides along those curved lanes. The same goes for the sun. All the planets are carried in paths that feel like orbits because they're moving straight in a warped environment. Even falling toward Earth isn't about hooks dragging you down. You're coasting along geometry that directs you into the ground. Heavy or light, all objects follow that track because space-time itself decides the path. Now, here is where time re-enters. Curved space pulls time along with it. Near a massive object, the bending isn't just spatial. It also slows down the ticking of clocks. Put 2 identical timepieces in different gravitational environments and they won't agree. One deeper in the gravity well ticks slower relative to one higher up. Relativity calls both valid. Combine this with the velocity effect from earlier, and you now have 2 distinct routes to dilation, moving fast or sitting close to mass. Both shift time. This isn't speculation. Astronauts on the International Space Station experience both at once. Speed makes their clocks tick slower, weaker gravity makes them tick faster. The two influences balance against each other, and instruments measure the net offset directly. On Earth, ultra-precise optical clocks have even shown measurable differences in tick rates when separated vertically by only a few dozen centimeters. That level of sensitivity shows how real and unavoidable spacetime curvature is for timekeeping. And the consequences scale up. Around black holes, the warping grows extreme. Space-time bends in the funnels so steep that not even light can climb out past the event horizon. In those regions, time drags catastrophically compared to the outside world. Minutes near the edge could equal years for distant observers. That effect isn't just cinematic, it follows directly from geometry. You bend space heavily enough, and time stretches right along with it. If you set aside black holes and return to Earth, the same principles quietly power the systems you depend on. Space-time's geometry forces us to adjust for both motion and gravity when dealing with orbiting satellites. Without those adjustments, nothing involving global positioning would work for more than a few moments. This geometric view is why GPS and other practical systems must correct for relativistic effects. Engineers literally use Einstein's formulas to keep each clock aligned with the rest. So space-time isn't just a clever metaphor. It's the proper way reality arranges events, the only framework consistent with the fact that light speed stays fixed. Space and time never were independent, and once you treat them as fused, both motion and gravity click into place as the behavior of geometry itself. The stretch of light on a moving clock, the drag of seconds deeper in Earth's field, the path of planets through solar orbits, they are all threads of the same structure. And that's not abstract background knowledge. You interact with the result every day. Signals from satellites, the timing of networks, the way your location tracks true instead of wandering wildly, all of it runs through calculations based on space-time's curvature. Whether you notice it or not, your phone, your maps, and your entire navigation system only work because engineers build relativity in at the root. Which brings us to the next piece. Once you realize that bending time and space isn't only for stars or black holes, but also shows up in everyday tools, the story turns personal, because the same principles that steer orbits and stretch seconds are quietly making sure you don't end up lost when you just want to find coffee down the street. Your GPS would be trash without Einstein. Ever wonder why the location pin on your phone actually lands on your street and not halfway across the state? That accuracy comes from a system running in orbit above you, and the only reason it works is because Einstein's relativity is built into the design. Without it, your GPS would be trashed within hours. Global Positioning System satellites don't magically sense where you are.